Not quite what I was expecting. It wasn't all bad, but I certainly didn't think it was all good either. Stick around while we take a look at the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. Now, if this is your first contact with us, welcome aboard. My name's Carl Bromley, and this is the Trekkie's Guide to the Galaxy. So, Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 11, Su'Kal, written by Anne Cofell-Saunders and directed by Norma Bailey. Our episode opens where we left off last week, at Georgiou's memorial with Adira and Stamets. Adira is looking incredibly out of place, and Stamets is trying to reassure them that they are part of this crew and part of this family. I thought it was quite nice, the little scene that emphasised the relationship that's been developing between them throughout the season, especially as Gray reappears to Adira, apologising to them for having gone away. Now, this part on its own has a couple of ups and downs for me. Firstly, the downs. Now, I've never claimed to be a Trek expert, so please do correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, when a Trill host dies and the symbiont is transferred to a new host, it's only the memories of the original host that are passed on. The conscious living being that was a host is now dead, and this has been shown on screen in Deep Space Nine when Jadzia had her Jonkara. Each former host that transferred into one of the other crew members only had the memories of their lives and the previous Jonkaras that they had participated in. So why is it that Gray is describing his existence as if he is still very much alive and conscious inside Adira and the Tal symbiont? He describes his reason for stopping talking to Adira is that basically he's been trying to figure out how to exist and that he feels stuck, whereas they get to interact with everyone. Now, if the character of Gray is going to be a fully fledged character and not just a part of the now joined Adira coming to terms with the complexities of being a host, then that means we're going to be rewriting the very existence of a long-established race of beings in the Star Trek universe. And if that's just being done for the sake of it, and not to actually contribute to a good plot, well, I'm not sure I'm up for that. So I really hope that it's leading somewhere. On the other hand, if they do stick to the established relationship of the host with the symbiont, then this would all still actually be Adira learning how to live with the memories of the former host. And that could make Gray an interesting character in the long run. Okay, just humour me for a minute here. What if it's that Gray is the personification of the internal struggles that Adira is dealing with? So far, he's shown up when Adira is in an emotionally heightened state. In the mess hall, it was loneliness, and he was telling Adira that they had to reach out and make connections with people. They then did this, becoming closer to Stamets and Culber, and Gray went away. Now, he shows up at a memorial when Adira would once again be in a heightened state of emotion, probably about Gray's death. And the way he describes how he's feeling almost verges on jealousy over Adira being free to interact and him being stuck. It's almost as if Adira is feeling guilty over having the life and the connection to the symbiont that Gray should have had, and that guilt is manifesting itself in this appearance of Gray. That would work. Next, we find out that the computer has found a life sign inside the Kelpian ship that's stuck in the Veruban Nebula, and Saru reveals that the red marks we saw on the Kelpian doctor's skin in the distress call weren't radiation burns. They were actually the result of her being pregnant. Therefore, the life sign inside the ship must be the child. So obviously, we jump straight to the nebula. Saru orders Discovery into the nebula, and it's immediately bombarded with radiation, which is damaging the shields. Now, I find it very odd that they didn't conduct any sort of scans to determine what effect the nebula would have on the ship's systems. At least then they could have formulated some sort of plan. Anyway, Discovery shields drop down to 50%, which seems to really concern Burnham as she starts to put pressure on Saru to leave the nebula. So Buck takes his ship to fly to the crash site, as it's a smaller ship and can dodge the nasty parts of the nebula. And the plan works. Even though he does sustain some injuries due to the radiation, he manages to locate the planet with the crashed ship and a pocket of the nebula big enough for Discovery to jump to. The planet is made of dilithium and appears to be the source of the burn. So they contact Admiral Vance to tell him that they will beam to the ship, rescue the survivor, and try to figure out how they can secure all that dilithium for the Federation. Saru intends to accompany, not lead, accompany the away team. And he intends to leave his new number one in charge, which Vance doesn't seem too thrilled about. At this point, Vance informs Saru that he's dispatched part of the fleet to Kaminar because Osira is conducting military exercises nearby. Saru immediately forgets about the stranded Kelpian survivor that's been alone for a century and proposes jumping to defend his home. Now, is it just me, or have the characters of Saru and Burnham gone complete 180 in this season? In the first half, it was Burnham that was going off her gut feelings, breaking the rules and just doing what she wanted, despite the protocols. Now, on the other hand, it's Saru who's being completely led by his emotions and impulses and doesn't seem to be able to work beyond those feelings. And Michael points this out when she's talking to Buck and says she's not sure Saru will be able to make the tough call if needed. I get that it's all very close to home for him with it all being set around the Kelpians, but what's happened to the Saru that we know, who manages to find that line between protocols and emotional need for doing the right thing? I want that Saru back. Anyway, we get a touching little scene where Burnham is giving Tilly the benefit of her experience about being a first officer. Fortunately, she misses out the parts about mutiny and going against orders. Discovery jumps near to the planet, and Saru, Burnham and Culber beam down, and Tilly takes the big chair, jumping Discovery back outside the nebula to safety. Now then, let's tackle the two story plots that evolve from here. First, the away team. As they materialise, their appearance has been altered. It turns out that they've beamed into a huge-scale holoprogram on the Kelpian ship, and it's masked their original identities. Burnham is now a Trill, Culber a Bajoran, and Saru is human. This was done by the programme to help prevent the Kelpian survivor being afraid when meeting people from the outside. My problem is, that doesn't make much sense. It's a nice idea to have the crew's appearance changed, but surely a Kelpian and two humans showing up wouldn't scare the survivor. They continue to explore the programme and find a huge menacing looking door which is chained and braced to prevent anything coming out, and they find the survivor, a Kelpian called Sukal. They try to explain to him who they are and where they're from, but this scares Sukal, causing the chained door to burst open. Sukal runs away scared as they've woken the monster inside which he locked away. Saru and Culber go to find him while Burnham stays to prevent anything escaping from the door. After coming across a recreation of the day Kaminar joined the Federation, then a Kelpian elder, they discover that Sukal will be hiding in his fortress. Burnham, meanwhile, has had a run-in with the monster behind the door, which we learned from the elder is from an old Kelpian story that teaches children to face their fears. She falls from the stairs and wakes to find Sukal. And this next bit I quite enjoyed, as she's able to use her xenoanthropology skills to try and connect with Sukal. It was nice to see an away team member actually using their skill set to try and achieve the goal. As unsuccessful as she is, At least she tries the logical approach. Saru and Culber arrive and Sukal is faced with the monster. Obviously terrified, he lets out a scream that sends a shockwave blasting outward from the planet. The shockwave was in essence a mini burn, and we now learn that it was in fact Sukal that caused the burn. It turns out that because Sukal's mother was trapped on the planet while she was pregnant, the embryo was affected by the subspace radiation and the amount of dilithium surrounding them. And basically now, if Sukal screams too loud, it will cause another burn. Now, it's not the first time we've seen someone linked to their surroundings so closely. Think back to Star Trek III: The Search for Spock if you have trouble thinking of an in-universe example. But I've got to be honest, it looks like this season-long huge mystery about the burn, this galaxy-devastating event which killed billions upon billions of lives, was caused by a child's cry. And I'm sorry, but that just isn't the scale of payoff that I've been waiting for. It's totally unconnected with anything that we've seen so far this season. There's absolutely nothing I've seen that could convince me that this has been the setup from the beginning. And don't get me wrong, the actual theory itself I don't dislike, but it's taken us 11 episodes to get to this point, a tiny bit at a time across the season, and it's just not enough for me. How is this connected to anything other than what we've seen in this one episode? I just feel like I can discard the whole story arc and still be able to enjoy the other episodes from this season on the assumption that the burn happened, no one knows why, and at some point we might find out what happened. I think my fellow Let's Talk Trek panellist James summed this up perfectly.
Unsatisfactory.
Now then, on to the other plot of the episode. Acting Captain Tilly. First attempt, and the ship gets taken over and all the crew taken hostage. Looks like Vance was right to be concerned, but it wasn't just him. I was concerned about several points in this part of the episode. Number one, why have we only just found out that Discovery's got a cloaking device? Number two, have people forgotten about the impulse engine and evasive manoeuvres? Once cloaked, why didn't Tilly just order Discovery to move away at impulse so they were out of range from Osira, at least for a few minutes? Number three, where the hell is the sentient computer system that can stop a self-destruct and raise the shields to protect itself? The one that's been looking after the crew all season. Does it think that the ship being taken over is a good thing, so it decided not to disengage the spore drive and allow Osira to jump to Federation headquarters, where the next episode, presumably, all hell is going to break loose? You know what? I need to look for some positives here, because I really do feel like this episode has let us down. Right, here goes. Well, first, now we know where the effects budget for the season went, because the visuals in this episode are stunning. The nebula, the planet, the holoprogram, all of it was visually incredible. There's a lot of detail gone into it, and it was very impressive. Second, the individual parts to the episode, I think, would have actually made a really good idea for a standalone episode. If they hadn't been used as part of this payoff for the season-long story arc, I think the idea of a stranded lone survivor being raised and educated by a holoprogram designed by his mother, knowing he would end up alone and needing to be prepared for contact with the outside world, is actually a really good one. I just think it would need to be a localised effect, and the ship picks it up on sensors and goes to investigate. I liked seeing the crew as other races when they beamed in, but again, I think the idea should have been used for a different episode and a plotline where it would have had more impact. Another thing I did like was that Osira and the Chain did seem to pose more of a threat in this episode. Last time we saw her, she really did seem like she was all talk. Now, alright, she killed her own nephew and bombarded a planet without a moment's hesitation, but she was also defeated by an itty bitty scout ship, as Tilly points out. At least this time, she does actually have an impact. She sees through Tilly's posturing to the fact that she's hiding something, and manages to take over Discovery in a matter of seconds, so she certainly gets a thumbs up from me in this episode. Now, Dr. Culber. He was the right choice to bring on the away mission. As much as he hasn't really had anything to do yet, I think he'll play a vital part in the next episode. Saru currently is very heavily involved in his surroundings, and there is a 120-year-old Kelpian with the social skills of a child to gain the trust of. With his experiences, Culber is the ideal choice, and I just really hope he gets a chance to shine in the next episode. Okay, so now we need to rate this episode. Like I've said, I think there are a lot of really good ideas in this episode, and I think that if they'd been used in a completely separate way to the main season arc, then it could have been an absolute winner. But unfortunately, they weren't. I've been waiting for 11 episodes now to find out what caused the burn, and this payoff didn't make me go wow. So I'm afraid that for me, this episode was a disappointment, and I'm going to give Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 11, Sukal, a warp factor rating of 5. Now the next episode has, like this one, had its name changed to There Is a Tide, and it's directed by Trek veteran Jonathan Frakes, who's directed 2 of my favourite episodes from this season, so I've got high hopes and everything crossed that it will give us some redemption going into the season finale. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, along with your thoughts on this episode. Please give us a like if you enjoyed this review, and also we'd love it if you'd consider subscribing to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so that you see all of our new content when it goes live. Don't forget we're live every Sunday night at 9 PM UK time for Let's Talk Trek with our friends from the USS Riker's Beard, so be sure to check that out. And until next time, set a course for Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 12, Warp 5. Engage.